I guess, but they also, I mean, each of these guys doesn't really know to fear her, right? Um,
Separately, yeah, you're right.
so they're probably just like, I can fight. It's a woman. Like, I'll fucking kill her.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched. I
finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David, and today I finally watched You're Next.
And this is Alon, and I also finally watched You're Next. And the intro music, once again, is by Jesse Jace Thomas.
And if you want to hear more from Jesse Jace Thomas, you go to jessejacethomas.bandcamp.com. The link is in the description. I am really excited we're doing this episode. I think this may be one of my favorite genres of movies or it's probably more of a subgenre that I haven't really seen a ton of because it's super specific. It's kind of a revenge movie, but it's like the thing hasn't happened to our protagonist that requires what they do be revenge. So really it's a bad guys fucked with the wrong person movie. Like they chose the wrong victim.
Yeah, I mean, I think bad guys choosing the wrong victim is a subgenre, but it's a subgenre that really, like, even if it half-ass works, it really works, right?
Yeah, and so this movie is one that I always wanted to watch, and I get it not confused, but like I've seen the trailer for this one, and then there's another one that is a Luke Evans movie where he basically gets attacked, him and his wife, by these like bad guys, and then it turns out that he's like either a serial killer or like an assassin. And so like these two I think came out somewhat around the same time, and so they're both ones that I wanted to see. So this one that we just did, Your Next, came out in 2011. And then in 2012, Luke Evans starred in No One Lives. And it doesn't sound at all like I'm reading this off IMDb right now.
Yeah, because you're not.
And so when both of those came out, I was like, they both look awesome. And we are going to do No One Lives next year. Just spoiler alert. But this movie was like, it's weird too, because like it's it's a horror kind of violent movie, and its Rotten Tomatoes critic rating is higher than its audience one. And I was like, that's so weird for this type of movie to be. It's like pretty critically well received. But I thought it was really great. And especially to like, when you consider the context of the movie. So like Adam Wingard directed this. The other thing I've seen that he directed is The Guest, which is another movie I want to do with you. You've obviously seen Death Note with him, and so you have a much different view of him than I do. But also, like, so the people in this movie, like Tariq is played by Ty West, who just released X and Pearl, and then Joe Swanberg has done a ton of movies like Digging for Fire, Drinking Buddies, and I think he has that show Easy on Netflix. So it's like this whole group kind of came together with this idea, and we're just like, all right, we'll just. Or not the whole group, right? But they like this group of friends decided like, oh, you have this great idea. Let's do it. And we'll just all work on it together. And even the guy that plays the Tiger Mask guy, he wrote the movie. So it's really cool how this all came together, and it's done really well. And it's just a satisfying movie.
Was that a tiger mask and not a wolf?
So here's the thing, man. I was watching it and I was like, I have no idea what these fucking masks are. So like I'm halfway through the movie.
One's a lamb, one's a fox, and one I thought was like a wolf.
That's a tiger. Yeah. And if you know it's a tiger, then you know it's the tiger mask is the first one to die. The fox is the guy who kills the mother, the matriarch upstairs. Mm-hmm. And then the sheep is obviously the sheep. Yeah. I was so confused at which mask was which. And so I had to like I went on to IMDb and was like, went into the synopsis and was like, oh, that was the tiger mask? Okay. Like, which made it a little bit harder to track for me. So maybe some coloring on the masks.
Yeah. I mean, white masks are spookier. Everyone knows that. The other thing is that you got this movie mixed up with The Guest. When you first suggested this movie, I got it confused with the 2008 movie The Strangers with Liv Tyler.
Okay, yeah. Which, if you go on IMDb, you may also like movie is The Strangers.
Yeah. So The Strangers, I've seen bits and pieces of it. Three guys in a mask sort of vibe there. But this is not The Strangers. This is You're Next. And what I really liked about how the movie starts is it starts in a very typical horror movie way, with a sex scene. First of all, the sex scene is not a normal sex scene. It's not like two college students getting it on or anything like that. It's like an old man and a young woman, and the young woman is not enjoying it at all. But they're together, I guess. I think
we saw the entire sex scene. And it was
from
like
start to finish. Yeah,
it was 15 seconds. Yeah, so it's like this movie starts out with. It does two things that we've seen in so many horror movies. It starts out with a kill in the first 5 minutes, and it starts out with a death due to sex.
Due to sex.
You know what I mean, right? Like, if you have sex in a horror movie, you probably die.
Sure.
A la Halloween, all of these. And what's funny, too, is in having this first kill and then putting You're Next on the window, it does throw you off as to the rest of the movie a little bit until we get to a point where I want to talk about when things were given away to you, right? But it sets the tone really well. You have like a pretty good murder, but it's also like, I think because this was made for a lower budget, it has to have stuff more off screen, which, because I'm kind of a little bitch, I like enjoy not seeing it completely on screen. But yeah, it this opening scene is so like much an homage to other homage is maybe giving a lot of credit. It's like stealing or an homage from like movies before it, but it also just sets up the twists later on really well to where maybe you don't expect them because you're like, oh, why'd they kill this first family? They're just murderers. They're just people who get off on the thrill of killing. So that's why they killed this first family, and then they're moving to now our family. It's well done.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. And even though it's a little cheesy, the Your Next title screen being like in the movie and then like jump cutting it to the credits, I still think is pretty cool. Another couple things that they established in here is this guy lives secluded and the music was playing forever, I guess. Now,
that's another thing I actually really like about this this movie is like there's a few music cues throughout that I think are really well done, and they're also like there's songs that seem familiar but I didn't know, which is like I think like a smart job, and obviously like probably a cost-effective measure. But yeah, so after that first killing, we get the mom and dad driving, right? And they're like, oh, we're so isolated up here. It'll be nice to have a neighbor and they point to him and he's like, oh yeah, he's here because he left his wife and he's with a college student. So it's like after the fact, we now know what the deal was with those two people that were just murdered. And then they get to their house and they're like, oh, that's funny. The door's open. And you're like, oh my God, guys, what do you mean? Like, I am telling you, and I don't know if this is due to movies, but if I ever come like, and it's also probably due to my dad, but like if we've ever come and the door's open, even if we're like, oh, we think we left it open, I think I remember that, we're like checking the house.
Are you checking the house? Or are you, kids, let's get back in the car and call the cops? When I grew up, I lived in a neighborhood where, I was a teenager and my friends were teenagers and I had a bunch of neighborhood friends. And we used to go in and out of the house all the time, and we wouldn't always like close the door behind us. You know how kids are. I remember one time we left the door open and a cop who just was like driving by. Yes, we lived in one of those neighborhoods. Was like, hey, I was just checking up on you guys because I saw that the door was open. And we're like, oh, yeah, shit. Yeah, we're all fine. We just forgot to close the door. And he was like, okay, just checking. That's like the kind of neighborhood I lived in. But yeah, if I came up to my house and it was like the door wide open, I'd be like, all right, get back in the car, call the cops.
If anyone didn't know that you were white before, based on how that interaction just went, they're like, okay, I know who Alon is. And your name's Alon. But what did you think about Paul and his wife is like, I heard footsteps upstairs, and he's like, oh no, you didn't. I'm gonna go up and check. And you're just like, part of me was like, well, you're such a fucking idiot. She said she knows what she heard, but then the other part of me is like, I would also probably be like, what are the chances of that up here?
So a couple of things were established before that scene, right? Because we cut to Crispin and his girlfriend in the airport, or like on their way to their mom and dad's house, and he was like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, well, at least there'll be booze," and he's like, "Oh no, my mom's on medication, so there won't be booze." I thought it kind of was hinting that the mom might be mentally ill. And so her being like, oh, I heard footsteps upstairs, and the dad like gaslighting her, being like, no, you didn't, you dumb bitch, was like a hint to her mental illness. Like maybe she has schizophrenia or something, you know?
Yeah, I don't know what that was. She definitely is like she seemed like the type of woman that would just be like, overcome very quickly. Like if she saw like a scary movie, she'd be like, oh no. Like, you know,
could we also talk about how very attractive that woman is? I kept saying like, I kept saying like, that is the youngest looking 50-year-old I've ever seen, or the most worn out 30-year-old I've ever seen. But she's the mom, so she has to be like in her 50s.
She was 53 at the time of filming, but yeah, I'm looking at her photo now, and she actually does look pretty young. I think they had to make her look older for purposes of this. Yeah, that's interesting though. I didn't notice that part of it. I was fairly taken with our main protagonist. I thought she was very pretty.
Oh, well, yes, of course, but I was just saying for
the accent also too, just like
the accent does it for you. Got it. Okay, I'll tell you.
Well, and that's whatever. That's one thing I want to talk about too. I tried to keep from talking to you about this before we did this, but the one thing that we talked about is, and I agreed with your second point on this, but I think she's like clearly the best actress in this, the best actress in this movie. Like to me, far and above everyone else.
Yeah. Can we also agree that Dad is the worst actor in all of this?
He's not the greatest. He's all right. I mean, I think everyone else is fine and passable, right? But
it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell because of the twist that happens in the end. The whole time, the whole beginning part of this for me, I was like, why are they acting so weird? Why is this brother acting so weird? Why is this girlfriend acting so weird? And I just kept trying to dissect. I was like, I know there's a twist in this movie, so I'm already looking for it, right? So I'm like, why is everyone so fucking odd? And then as it like unfolds, you realize, oh, okay. But then for me, like the brother that got, we're skipping ahead a bit, but the brother that got shot in the shoulder, I was like,
Drake.
Why is he acting? Yeah, Drake. Why is he acting so weird? And then he had nothing to do with the scheme. And I was like, oh, he's just a bad actor.
No, I think he was playing an asshole. I do want to get to that. And we're going to get to it fairly quickly. The only thing I want to say is, so we don't know when these people are going to attack, right? And I didn't know, you know, the cast list is pretty short, and I didn't know who was going to be a bad guy or not, although the bad guys are just the three that say Lamb, Fox, and Tiger Mask on there. So, you know, I should have been clued in. So, like, I was like, oh, they could attack at any point, because we also don't know how long before they attacked the first house, right? At this point, I'm still thinking it's just like a series of attacks, not like this coordinated thing.
Right.
So that part was interesting to me. I was like, oh, you know, they can the movie can set up having these jump scares that turn out to be nothing because we don't know how long they're going to case them for, right? So, we have this wolf guy that's like looking through the glass, I thought it was a wolf. It was probably like a fox or a tiger. I don't fucking know. It wasn't the fox. The fox guy was upstairs peeing in bottles, apparently. And then so the father goes upstairs when the mom freaks out, and the jump scare we get is Crispin is like, he like finds his father up there and it's like behind a door, right? And so it's like this fake out that they keep doing. And then this is when things start getting, I think, kind of interesting to me with your like, why are they acting so weird, right? Because Drake shows up, played by Joe Swanberg, and there's this sibling rivalry between him and Crispin. I was like, what the fuck is the point of this? I was like, in a movie where we're just going to have like people attacking, like, why does that matter?
Right.
And that was confusing to me. And then we get this, before we get to the points we want to make, I just want to establish this, the sending Kelly to go get the milk. You think like, oh, she's going to get clued in that something happened. But oh no, she misses, the door, they don't answer the door and she doesn't look through the window.
Yeah. Okay. So about that, the mom sends her to go get the milk. Yeah. And Crispin's like, where are you going? And she's like, oh, your mom told me to go to the neighbor and get milk. And he's like, she did. And now I'm thinking, like, wouldn't he do anything to prevent her from going over there? But then I was like, maybe the mom is in cahoots because, and Crispin knows about it because he's like, oh, she did send you over there to get the milk, so she must know something I don't know. But then that doesn't even turn out to be true, right? So it was weird.
I think the way you can explain that is Crispin is like, oh, why are you going over there? Oh, fuck. But Crispin's also a bitch. And so he's like not really good at this, which why would you be good at this? Killing your family. Spoiler alert. But
right.
So he just doesn't know to be like, oh, well, I'll go. You stay and hang out with my family. But yeah, that point, I didn't even think about that because, he should have stopped her.
Maybe Crispin doesn't know that they killed the neighbor first, right? Like that could be a thing.
Potentially, yeah, that does explain it too.
But his reaction was weird. Like, it was out of the ordinary. So there's these choices where you're like, why are these characters acting weird? And it never comes to fruition.
It does a little bit. And maybe like the right there is like not unexplainable, but a little bit like, oh, I don't know exactly why that happened. But I think, and we'll get to it in a second, but also they then have like, Kelly doesn't like Aaron. She's like talking shit about her. And then Drake's trying to fuck his wife and she's like, not now. And then, so what is funny too is like, so Kelly eventually goes to the neighbor's house and she sees the dead dude sitting through the window, which I think Aaron would have been smarter and realized she was seeing a dead guy and Kelly wasn't. She was like, oh, help us. But she went through the back way and Aaron walked down the road and went to the front of the house. So she didn't see him dead. She just knocked and no one answered.
Right.
So at this next point, another son shows up and another daughter shows up with their significant others. And I look at Felix and I was like, that looks like the fuck up. And it like clued me in. I was like, okay, especially just two more groups coming. I was like, all right, something is not what it seems. Now, I think
also Tariq is weird too, right? He's odd. And then Felix's girlfriend is wearing way too much eyeliner to be normal. And so I'm thinking, are all six of them, are all four of those the bad ones, right? That's what I was thinking.
Well, as it turns out, Tariq and his girlfriend are there to be the second and third to die, or first and
second.
Okay, Amy dies. Yeah, Amy dies before the mom. Barely. But yeah, like that's why they're brought there. But I mean, and part of the reason Felix, you're like, okay, something's up with Felix, was Z, his girlfriend. You're like, okay, you're like, this is what you're into. I was like, so it made me do this. I was like, oh, there's something going on more to this than I think. And I was like, oh wait, it's kind of super obvious that it's Felix.
See,
And so
I didn't think that it was super obvious. See, what gave away for me is, you know, that creepy family photo that got shot by the arrow that like Aaron was staring at, right?
Yeah.
It's like all the boys lined up behind the couch and the mom and dad are on the couch in the foreground. I thought this was a cult where the family brings all these significant others to their house to be killed.
You're describing the plot of Ready or Not.
I am. But unlike this, it's instead of like only one of them bringing...
Just to be clear, I have not seen Ready or Not, so do not spoil Ready or Not for me.
I was just saying it's all siblings bringing a significant other to be quote unquote slaughtered was my
it's also like
on how this was going to go.
I think that's also like the movie The Invitation, which came out a few years ago. There's an Invitation that came out this year that's also very
So you're telling me
Ready
there's an
or Not.
Invitation, there's a You're Next, there's a The
Ready or
Strangers, and there's too many of these.
Yeah, there are a little bit too many. So I thought when Felix shows up, I was like, oh, Felix, he seems off. But that's too obvious. And I was like, but this is a kind of a lower budget movie, so maybe they just are going for the obvious. I was like, but if it's not being too obvious, who else? And I was like, oh wait, why do we have this sibling rivalry with Drake and Crispin? I was like, Drake's too obvious. I was like, is it Crispin? And I had that thought, and then it just left, right? And I was like,
oh, Crispin was my number one suspect from the get-go. I'll tell you that.
That's because he has LBE, little bitch energy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I was like,
and actually,
something's up.
Felix is also like sneakily has like a little bit like two of my favorite parts that aren't the Aaron parts, where like we'll get to him when we do, but like I think he did pretty well in the movie too.
No, he was definitely a good actor, but yeah, a little bitch energy. It's funny how the two little bitch energy brothers in the entire family are the cahooters.
Yeah, and so then we get to the family dinner, and the one thing I want to bring up about that before all hell goes loose, or goes loose. What the fuck? Is the thing from Drake about, oh, you should do commercials. Commercials I think are even better than the TV. And I like at the time I was like, that's so fucking weird and trolly. But then I realized it was just like probably an inside joke with all the directors who were on this movie of like, oh, commercials, that's where we should, because they're all like, that's bullshit.
Right. Or, I mean, but it's also something like super condescending to say to like your sister's beau, right? Like, it's just like, it's Drake being an asshole because he's an established asshole. And like, think of like the most, oh, by the way, not all independent directors wear giant scarves all the time. Okay. Just wanted to let you know on that.
Some go ascots, I think. So we get to the first death. Who did you think was going to die first?
Oh, I had that spoiled with me because Taylor read the entire like Christian synopsis about the whole movie, and because that's the only.
What's a Christian synopsis?
Like, like the really high detailed synopsis being like, they say "damn" on minute 12 second 34.
Why did she read that before the movie?
Because she didn't want to be surprised and grossed out by a death. So she read the entire, like, how everyone is going to die, in what order everyone is going to die. So nothing surprised her. And that was the only way she was going to watch this, she told me. So I was like, whatever, you do you. So as a joke, she goes, oh my God, do you know the names of these characters in these movies? I was like, no, I don't know anything about this movie. And she goes, well, one of them's name is Tariq. And guess who dies first? And then, so we're watching this whole thing. We're waiting for like African-American man to play Tariq. And spoiler alert, Ty West is not African-American. So then I knew he was going to die first. Long story short.
I think Tariq is supposed to be kind of a more Middle Eastern than African-American name in this.
It is, but when you read it on a sheet of paper, you don't know.
Also, they definitely gave Ty West some sort of spray tan, or he was out in the sun to play Tariq, because he does not normally look that shade that he did for this movie. But this is 2011. It was a different era. So
is it?
So the arrows just start coming into the house, right? And they all kind of hide. And this is like immediately as the audience, you see Aaron like jump into action. And then they all try and make calls. And Felix way too quickly is like, Dad, I think they have a cell phone jammer. And I was like, in retrospect, what the why? Why are you why are you just like, you want to be like right? You want you impress your dad before you murder him?
I thought he brought the cell phone jammer, and I thought he was admitting it. He was like, I just thought we could all be a family or something. I don't know. But yeah,
fuck up Felix would do something like that. And then next we keep establishing like, so at the dinner, I was like, this family fucking sucks. Like the only good person here is Aaron, and then maybe Crispin, right? It seems like he's okay, but he gets made fun of for being fat and like.
But not only does he get made fun of for being fat, right? This is an important thing, is that Aaron was his student.
Right.
And she had to quit being a TA to pursue their relationship. So that was another like point that everyone was pressing on him was his relationship.
I think the point I would press on is like, she could have done better, you know? But I guess that student teacher thing. Yeah, maybe that does make it
really
more
woos
wrong.
Some women. I don't know.
And then so next we get Aaron just telling everyone to stay inside, and all the fucking children are arguing over who's fastest. Drake's like, even with this arrow, I can outrun you. And then Amy's like, I got this. I can do it. And they're like, we believe in you, baby. And then she runs outside, and the fucking slow-mo. And I was like, I thought an arrow was just going to come into her chest and throw her back. Like it was like,
yeah, I thought that too. I thought that too. But what's crazy too is that when she was like, oh, I'm the fastest, I can do this, and everyone's like supporting her, they go, oh yeah, the last thing they're going to expect is someone to bolt out of the door like, crazy at 100 miles an hour. And I was like, that's the first thing they're going to expect, right? Like the first thing they're going to expect is everyone to run away. They put the wire and it cuts her throat. And by the way, like technically that wouldn't work because her throat is sliced on like a horizontal level, and running into something dead on isn't going to slice your throat. Something would have to be moving back and forth to be able to do that.
Well, it depends on how thin the wire was. I don't know how that would have exactly worked. Also, people are different heights. So what if you just hit her in the chest? Right? You just
slice her nipples right off.
Okay. I also thought it was a little too neat. Like I always notice this in movies when like you take out an entire couple, right? So they took out Tariq and then they took out her right away. I was like, that's like just a little too neat for me. But and you'd think at this point they would start listening to Aaron. She's like, oh, we got to lock all the windows and doors. And she just starts doing it. And I didn't get this. You didn't get this on first view, but Crispin's like, I've never seen you act like this before. And he's like, oh shit, what is going on here? It's just like, oh, this isn't good.
My favorite interaction is between her and Z, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But you could see it on Z's face as she's explaining why she's good at all these things. Right. Like, oh, this is way bigger. Like she's a way bigger trouble than we need right now,
Well, and at that point, though, Z already, like we as the audience already knew that Z was bad. Do you think Z talked Felix into this, or is she just along for the ride?
Oh, Z totally talked Felix into this.
That's what it feels like. Feels like she talked both of the brothers into it, honestly. Like a devil's three-way situation there. What I also at this point noticed in the movie, which I think is kind of interesting, is there's only three bad guys, and there's like maybe 8 people left, right, that we think are good guys at this point in the movie. And this almost seemed like have you ever played the game Mafia like as a kid, where you have yeah, that's what this movie felt like. And it's just like the mom goes upstairs and is like, you can't be alone, like there's less of them, so they got to attack you.
It's so stupid. feeling faint. So they put her in the house is being attacked. And what do? They put her in a bedroom, lock the door in a dark room. Like, that's the dumbest way to go.
Well, but they didn't know at that point that there were people in the house. We knew, so we knew it was stupid, but they didn't know.
I feel like it's just stupid. But whatever.
Maybe they all go upstairs, but I mean, also you have Felix and Z and Crispin giving bad advice, right? So like almost half of your group is like not giving good advice, and then the other people that aren't Aaron are fucking idiots. So you just have all that noise. They're not going to do things smart. Also, I love at this point Aaron's in the kitchen and she like boils water and she gets a knife. She gets attacked and she just fucking stabs the dude in the arm. And you're like, if you hadn't seen the trailer at this point, you're like, okay, this is what this movie is. Awesome. Like, for sure, you know how this is going to go. But I also love the way that for so long in the movie, you don't think the boiling water is going to pay off, and then it pays off in a really great way.
Yeah, that's true.
And at the same time, this is when the mom upstairs gets a fucking machete in the head. Machete's
very
left. Yeah, weird.
Weird way.
That's not how machetes work. And then they leave her, and then the guy comes back out and grabs his machete again because he's like, I need that. So.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He does, isn't he? Because he's still under the bed when What's-Her-Face comes in?
When Kelly, and she looks under the bed and sees him, and instead of going downstairs and saying anything to anybody, she's like, fuck all of you, and like ducks under the wire and runs for it. And then at this time, too, Crispin's like, you know, I can do this. I'm going to go. And Aaron's like, don't do it. And he's like, I got it, baby. And she's like, oh. Okay, all right. You know, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it. You're a fucking idiot. And I like the way he cuts the wire too. Like he's like, I'm not gonna make the same mistake as the rest of them. But he gets to the car, and we immediately see like that they're disabled, and it's like, okay, so they've thought of everything. This has been like well planned out.
But Crispin knows that it's disabled. See, this is where it gets weird, right? Because Crispin is like, oh, he's just hanging out idly by the car. And I'm like, dude, you should really like be checking over your shoulder. You should just like get the hell out of there now. You should like figure it the fuck out and move on. And then he's just like idly like taking a breath. And that's when I was like, oh, fucker's in on it.
Yeah, possibly. But
or he's an idiot. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's what we think, because the next scene is one of my favorite fucking parts. So Erin is back in the kitchen, and she's like, all right, we need weapons. She grabs a bunch of weapons. You think she's like getting that water boiling ready again. And she walks in to the other room. She's like, all right, we need weapons. And the guy comes through and like trips her. And it is like one of the most satisfying fucking scenes. And that kill
when the guy comes through the window, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the tiger. And
you missed the part where he tracked Kelly down.
Right. Yeah, he tracks Kelly down at another house, and that's a very long and kind of brutal death. Like, he's kind of stalking her, and he could kill her at any point, and then he just gets right over and fucking he gets the axe in her head, and then like it looks like he can't get it out, and then he sort of just sits on the couch for a little bit and like relaxes.
Even before that, did you realize how hard he had to punch her in the face to like make her go through the glass window?
Yeah, he's basically like a superhero. And that's like, when you put these guys in masks, they feel like much scarier, and like they're like not even human, you know what I mean? So like that part of it, obviously, as we talked about.
And then when you realize like they remove their masks to talk, they're just like three rednecks.
It's a little bit, that's what they look like. Yeah. But back to the death. Like, He goes to swing the axe, fucking hits him in the knee, hits him in the face, and then gets him on the ground and does not stop. And I love Felix afterwards, like, holy fucking shit, what was that? You know? And so right after that, too, he's like, she kind of looks over at Kelly, and I was like, did fucking Tiger carried Kelly all the way over here just for that? Like, why?
He did. He carried her all the way over there just to throw her through the window. But also, did you realize that this is kind of a good hint to when you know that Felix is part of it? Is Erin looks at Felix and she's like, "Why didn't you help me?" And then he was like, "Oh, it seemed like you had it pretty good on your own." But like, yeah, why didn't he help her? Right?
Yeah, but also this entire family kind of sucks, right? And they're rich. So they're not used to doing things like that. They don't get their hands dirty. But
They're
he also
rich.
Yeah, they rich, right?
Oh yeah.
So she looks over at Kelly, and then I love Felix is like, "Don't worry about Crispy, and he's tough." And she goes, "Aaron's like, no, he's not, but thanks."
Yeah, she knows. She knows what tough is, and she knows her boyfriend ain't it.
Yeah, and then the next scene is the reveal. The lights go out. Felix is like, "We'll go upstairs. You go down to the basement." And Aaron has just said, like, we can't go to the basement because they can just throw oil down there and kill us. Which is like, you're like, how? Who the fuck are you? Like, I was like, is she like Australian Special Forces? Like, what is this?
So do you remember the conversation that they were having in the car as they were driving to her house? Crispin reveals that his dad worked for like the defense
Yeah. Just in the marketing department.
sector. But she seemed like she was perturbed by that knowledge that he worked for the government part, the defense, whatever.
Yeah. The people that basically like either dealt arms or something like that. Yeah. I think it's like that's like a common movie thing to like, oh yeah, you work for these bad people. So yeah,
I guess, but then you start wondering as the audience, like, why is she so good at killing people? But then it's revealed that she, like, her dad was this like paranoid bunker guy and like trained her, like raised her in a convent full of like Armageddon people, basically.
right. Which is a little bit of a weird explanation for this, but it works well enough to where you're like, okay, that's cool. She goes down to the basement, and Felix and Z go upstairs, and they see the dad, and the dad's like, dude, I found pee bottles. They've been up here. And then Felix witnesses his dad get murdered. And even now, I was kind of like, all right, well, he just didn't help Aaron. His dad's dying in front of him, and his reaction was like, oh, fuck. But then he comes around the corner, and the wolf guy, or the fox stands next to him. He's like, did you have to do that in front of me? And like, then, obviously, right? I mean, you could have figured before. And I want to say, like, so at this point, I was like, that's such an obvious choice. And I almost wish the movie instead had like one less couple or two less couples. And it's just a badass movie instead of like a twist movie. It's just like the whole point of the movie is like these random people that go around killing people just for the fucking fun of it. Rather than like this backstory of like, oh, I want my parents' money.
But then it's like any other one, right? Then if you have that, it's like any other, these guys who you thought were the bad guys messed with the wrong guy. It's just like any of those other stories.
How many of those are there? How many of those are there?
5. There's 5. No, but I feel like this gives it layers, right? Like this gives it like some meat to it. And I liked it. I liked the whole movie. Like I didn't have an issue with any of it. I thought that the tone was kind of weird. If I was going to do anything critical to it, I mean, I actually have no problem with the tone, but it was kind of weird. And what I mean by that is like, did you feel like sometimes it was funny?
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, absolutely. So the other line,
it's hilarious.
The other line, jumping ahead, she's like, Z's like, I want you to fuck me on the bed next to your dead mother. And he's like, what the fuck would you even say that to me? And she was like, you never want to do anything interesting. And he's like, I don't think you can fairly accuse me of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the funniest dialogue there. And the other thing was that when Felix stabbed, what's his name? Drake. Yeah. When Felix stabbed Drake, in the chest, like 13 times with different screwdrivers, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
He's like, why won't you die? I'm not very good at this. Can you just die, please?
Well, what's funny too is he stabs him so many times in the chest. You're like, oh yeah, he definitely got him. But if you kind of look, the places he stabbed him were kind of like around the heart. Like he's definitely killed him, but he also definitely did a horrible job.
Well, that's why he hired people to do it, right? Like Crispin knows his limits, and Felix is like, oh yeah, I can be in the thick of it, but really, that's why he hired people. And then Crispin just fucking bailed. And okay, so at this point, right, one of the guys is dead. You find out that the other guy is his brother, and so he like confronts Felix. I'm pretty sure everyone's dead at this point, right?
He hasn't confronted Felix yet. So she's in the basement. She starts coming up, and the guy...
Oh, you're right. Okay, yes, I'm caught up.
The other guy, the sheep comes in. He finds Tiger, and he's pissed. And I even wrote down, I was like, probably his brother. And at this point, it's Crispin is in the wind. We're not even thinking about him. It's 2 masked guys left, and then Felix and Z. So it's basically 4 against 1.
Yep.
She makes a noise in the basement, and he is going to kill her. But Drake, who we haven't heard from in a while, wakes up with like an arrow in his back, and then the guy's about to go kill him, and then she comes out and saves him, and then the guy runs off. She like stabs him in the back, and he just makes a run for it.
This is kind of an odd choice too, right? And this is like another detail that might not have been important to the plot, but Drake asks Aaron what happened to his wife, and she's like, oh, she's fine, or she's upstairs with everyone else, or she says something comforting to him just so that he's like riddled with disappointment when his brother tells him that she's dead.
And also, I actually thought that it was going to play out. At some point, I thought they were going to try and convince people that Aaron was the one killing everybody, right? So I thought Felix, when he revealed to Drake, no, she's dead, was going to be like, oh, Aaron lied to you? She must be in on it. You know what I mean? To try and like, but no, nothing like that ever, which I'm kind of glad. That would have been a little convoluted to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So Felix comes down and he's like playing it cool. And I was like, the only thing that's like basically preventing Aaron from just dominating the rest of this fucking movie against these assholes is like the knowledge. And I think that is one of the most brilliant parts of this like screenplay is when she finds out information and like at what point in the movie and like how perilous her situation is, right? So right. Z and Felix are like, oh, maybe they're gone. Maybe you scared them off. And they're like, fuck that. And they like send Felix and Drake down to the basement, and they're like, we're going to protect this. And so they start like nailing through boards, right? And this is when she tells her all about like the survivalist stuff. And this is when Felix kills Drake. And I love the scene where Z is like she picks up the board with nails and she's about to hit Aaron in the head with it. And I was like, oh, this is how she's going to find out, because like, Z can't fucking kill her. Like Z's not going to be capable of it. And then she's able to like back away from it because she sees Aaron's going to notice. Right. And so like, I was like, oh, so she hasn't found anything yet. And then Aaron's like, you know what? I'm going to go upstairs. And Z tries to stop her because she's like, as soon as she finds the dad and that we lied, she's going to know, right? But no, she doesn't, because she goes up there and finds the dad. And as soon as she found the dad, I was like, oh, she could just think he was killed after.
Later.
Right? So that
later.
Yeah, that doesn't give us any information. And then the fox comes in. And this is a really cool like way that the movie goes, because she could kill this guy right now, but it's not really the time for a horror movie. So she like jumps out the fucking window, but like stabs herself in the leg, because like this thing, she's such a they've established how badass she is in this movie that you have to hobble her to make it seem like there's like some stakes.
Like they have a chance against her. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So she jumps out the window. She gets a big fucking shard of glass in her leg, and she like, a jump scare that's not even scary, but when she looks up from the ground to the window, you see the head poking out as too far away to do anything, right? I thought he was going to like try throwing the axe down at her or something, but she hobbles away into the forest, and so she's like catching her breath. Okay, so here's something cool. She finds a screwdriver, and she picks it up. And she's like, what is this? And you as the audience, it's like, what is this? And then for me, I realized what it was at the same time she realized what it was. And it was the screwdriver that she stabbed the other one in. So, of course, the other one's like there with the crossbow ready, right?
Yep. Yeah.
No,
No,
so I
yes.
thought that was cool.
So cool. She escapes. She gets back in the house and she goes to hide basically where Drake was. And I love this part because the lamb guy comes up. He looks down and sees the board and he scoffs. And as the audience, you're like, oh, he sees one of them. And he's like so arrogant. And then he just steps straight through a fucking nail. And like the muffled scream because he's got the mask on and the thing under the mask is so
it's so satisfying. Yes. Oh my God.
And I love Felix upstairs telling the fox, he's like, can you go fucking check on this? Like, this is what I pay you for. I'm not going down there. And this is like then the I want to fuck you next to your dead mom line, like that part.
When Felix and Z finally do join them down there, that's when a lot of stuff happens, right? That's when the brothers reveal who they are and everything kind of who they are. And they're like, fucking kill my brother. I'm not like with this anymore. Like I'm out. And he's like, you're not out because I will give you his half of the money. So you realize that he's paying them something like $400,000 each or something like that. And he's like, I'll give you your brother's cut, which is like $800,000.
He was like, I'll double it and give you 100,000 more. And so
yeah.
I was like, all right, so this is what the math is on this. So they were each, I don't know, I'm so confused. I guess they were going to get 300,000 originally, or I don't know, because he's like, I'll double what each of you get, and then I'll give you each 100,000 more. And he's like, so he'll get 300 and you'll get 5. And I was like, that is weird math to me. Like, you'll get your brother's 200,000 share, but your brother doesn't get an extra 100,000 that I'm giving you two who are still alive. Like, he did some accounting in his head of like, this is what I'll give you.
If I was the other dude not getting an extra slice because of the brother's death, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, why don't you just take the 900,000 and just split it evenly between both of us?
Well, because he doesn't have a dead brother and he doesn't want to quit anyway. He
probably
really
knew him. He was like a friend, right? I don't know. I don't know where these. That's the thing that was never established. Where did Felix find these assholes?
Yeah, but that's a small movie.
And who are they?
But that's a small movie thing, right? Not explaining like these details.
No, I know. It doesn't matter. It was just kind of a weird thing. But this entire conversation is overheard by Aaron.
And this is when she has like basically complete information as far as we, the audience, knows, right?
And now the only thing that can go wrong is a cell phone ring. Which
the cell phone's like, oh yeah, the cops got your message. And she's like, fucking great. I love this part where she fucking throat punches the was it the fox, I think? Yeah. Throat punches the fox, runs outside, and then immediately back inside. I was like, that's so brilliant. And then the sheep is like, oh wait, maybe she went back inside, and then just fucking stabs him in the head. One stab to the head does the trick.
It usually does. The other thing about that is that while she's stabbing him in the head, the other one, I think maskless at this point, Felix and Z are all together, and he has the crossbow, and he's like, well, it's 4v1, like, you know, we can totally handle this. He doesn't know the other dude died, right?
Right.
He's like, it's 4v1, we can totally handle this. And he's like, I'm going to go back inside the house. Oh, one quick thing. Sometimes between all of this, Aaron Jimmy rigged an axe to be tied to the front door. So when someone walks through the front door, the axe falls. It's basically Home Alone for adults, right? The axe falls and like fucking hits them right in the head or body or whatever. Now we're back.
I love the music during that scene too. It's like during that scene where she's setting that up, and then also while the fox is chasing her right after that. But yeah, what were you saying?
No, the music's great. The music's like meddling music, right? Like
yeah, and it's a lot of what he uses in The Guest too, like that type of electronic type music.
I've never seen The Guest.
Next year.
So anyway, I have to wait a whole year. So anyways, okay, so I just want to establish that there is now like an axe Jimmy rigged to the front door to kill someone that Aaron put up. Flash forward to Felix, Z, and the guy all like talking about how they can easily take her out if they just think about this, and he's going to go back in the house and they should stay out and like canvas the area for her. And so Felix is like, give me the crossbow. He's like, do you even know how to use the crossbow? And I have to show him how to use the crossbow because he doesn't, and Felix is an idiot. And the guy's like, I'm going to go back inside. And when he does that, I was thinking he's going to go back inside and get an axe through his head. But everyone in this movie decides to go inside through a broken window. Even fucking Crispin at the end decides to go inside through a broken window.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the new entrance. That's the new ingress and egress point. So, yeah, it made sense to me. I love the next scene, the camera flash kill, where she sets up the camera and it just keeps flashing. It keeps blinding Mr. Fox. And then she just comes in and fucking destroys him.
Yeah.
When she kills, she's like very precise and sure about it.
Well, yeah, because she knows what every person in every zombie movie doesn't know is you double tap that motherfucker, okay?
Well, this took place in 2011, so she saw '09's Zombieland. I also think like the camera kill is such a cool idea, but it could have been executed poorly, but it was executed like perfectly. It just all worked. Like they thought about it.
It was a little cheesy, but you're right. It worked. I mean, honestly, if like why are you walking towards the thing as you're being blinded? Like, I don't know. I would just be like, fuck this. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I guess, but they also, I mean, each of these guys doesn't really know to fear her, right?
Separately, yeah, you're right.
So they're probably just like, I can fight. It's a woman. Like, I'll fucking kill her.
You would think Z, knowing all of her backstory, would like warn a motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Z's not the brightest. So Felix then shoots a crossbow at her, and he thinks he hit her. He clearly did not. They're like both happy for a second. They're like, what? No. And so the kitchen scene is amazing. And it also has another great Felix line because Felix comes in to Aaron choking Z to death. And he goes to stab her. Oh no, this is before that, right? She's like has her from behind and is about to choke her. And Felix walks in and she throws the water on him, which he didn't think was going to come up. And he's like, it's not even hot, you dumb bitch. And then she fucking smacks him with it.
No, she doesn't.
Oh, she kicked the door into him.
No, even before that, he goes, the water's not even hot, you dumb bitch. And he slips on the water and he falls. He falls back. So she's like, all right, he's out a little bit. So she goes all her attention back on killing Z. He gets up. Then that's when he comes up. Then she kicks the door in his face.
Yeah. And then she's choking Z and Felix comes in and stabs her in the back. So she turns around, beats him with a blender, and then blends his fucking head, which I don't know that the blender would still work, but maybe it would. I guess it probably would.
It would, right? Like if it doesn't have like a it's not like a
safety setting.
It's not like a magic bullet where you have to like push down. It just go like a normal blender just goes.
Yeah, it's a disgusting death. It's pretty like brutal. And then Z's just sitting over there, and Aaron is not noticing her. And then Z like makes a noise, and Aaron just turns, fucking pulls the knife out of her back, flips it in her hand, and just stabs her in the head in like a fluid motion.
Another head stabbing kill. But yeah, I wonder, do you know how hard the human skull is? Because those knives, Aaron is either the strongest person alive or those knives are so well made, because the way the knife just goes through a human skull in this movie is amazing. Even the blades on the fucking blender.
Well, I mean, you don't know that it just probably fucked him up and it hurt. You don't know that it actually like went through his skull. But these are also rich people, so they probably have everything's pretty sharp, you know? They have good shit, high quality material.
Now,
Um,
at this point of the movie, you don't know if Crispin is good or Crispin is bad or where the fuck he is anyways. Um, but for me, I thought he was still good. And so I was like, that motherfucker is going to walk through the front door and die. And he goes through the window, which I previously said, but I'm just so astonished that he goes through the window.
well, but right before that, right? So Felix had just turned the cell phone jammer off for some reason. I don't fucking know why he decided now is the time to do it. And
No, because he has to call the cops. The cops have to show up so that it looks like his family was attacked.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe make sure everyone's dead before you do it. So Felix gets a call after he's been killed, and Aaron answers it. And it's funny, she's obviously so used to these crazy situations that she just lets Crispin talk, which is smart. And she obviously then finds out, because he's like, "Is it all done in there or what? I thought this, I thought this might happen." Or I don't know. Anyway, basically just reveals that he knew about it, was in on it, right? And she just doesn't say anything. It's to me, when I said earlier that, like, oh, I didn't like that first twist, this saved it for me. Like, this second twist, like, made it to where I was like, okay, yeah, I enjoyed the first now because of the second. Like, it turned it around. Like, I love the movie anyway because of the fucking kills and just the story. But
Yeah.
That, where I was like, it brought it up in my estimation, because it was like, all right, it's another, like, the twist upon the twist. And it's like, maybe in the beginning I thought, oh yeah, Crispin could be in on it. But when you reveal Felix, I was like, okay, yeah, it's Felix. It's obvious, like, whatever. And then as soon as Crispin calls Felix, I was like, oh, he's fucking bad too. I was also looking at the time. I was like, we have like 5 minutes left. Like, something else happens.
The way he tries to gaslight her at the end and trying to, like, be like, oh, I did this for us. And she was like, I could have died. And he was like, no. That was never the plan. And she's like, yeah, but you must have known that there was a chance that I could die. And he was like, no, you silly goose. And he was just basically like, look, I either go to jail or we're like fucking millionaires as like the sole inheritor. Because all this is because of money, right? Like, the whole cahoots between Crispin and Felix is because they're the two fuck ups. They probably thought they were going to get the least of the pot when their parents passed away. So they killed their entire family to become sole inheritors. Well, now Crispin is the sole inheritor, right? And then he explains how Aaron is supposed to be the only eyewitness that had nothing to gain from all of this. But if it was just Z, that would look suspicious. So it would have to be Z and her, etc., etc. And then basically she was like, well, I propose a third option.
Yeah, and first of all, I love, she came into this and they show the knife in her hand and it's a new knife. So she came to kill. It was like the only option.
I didn't notice it was a new knife.
Yeah. And I also thought too, when she was like, you must have known I could have died, I was like, so do you think Crispin planned on her dying? Because he's like, oh, well, we needed a witness other than Z. And it's like, so you make a good point that we needed a witness, and then you refute that point by saying, like, other than the other witness that we have. So it's like, we didn't actually need you. But I will say one thing that makes...
but two witnesses would make a stronger case for this.
Maybe, but the thing that I think actually makes me believe Crispin in that instant is back when Felix said, don't worry about Crispin, he's tough. Because why do you care if she's worried if you're just going to kill her?
I guess.
Like, I just think that the kind of, like, he shows her some, like, oh, I care about your feelings in this moment. Felix does that, oh, don't worry, he's alive. Like, to me, that, because if you think about it, with Drake, he couldn't just kill Drake. He's also like, oh yeah, your wife's dead. She's fucking dead, way dead. And then he stabs him, But with Aaron, he's like, oh, don't worry, Crispin, he's tough. He'll be okay.
I did kind of feel bad for when the daughter died. I was like, oh, she seemed like a sweet girl, right? I did not feel a damn thing when Drake and his wife died. I was like, those two are assholes through and through.
Yeah, but Drake was an asshole for most of it, and then like, after he'd been stabbed, he kind of turned it around a little bit. I do love
A little bit, yeah.
When she stabs him in the neck, he's like, "Why?" And she's like, "Why the fuck not?" And then the cop shows up and shoots her. And this, similar to like the Felix reveal that I didn't like, and then the Crispin saving it. So when the cop shoots her, I was upset because I was like, I don't want her to have gone all through this and then her die from this cop. And it looks like she dies. And I was like, that's not this, like, this movie's unsatisfying that way, right?
Right.
But then he goes to his car, calls it in. He comes back to the door and you're like, oh, fuck. And she starts crawling and like being the morally good person she is, the person that just shot her, she warns like, no, don't do it. Axe blade comes in, cut to you're next. And I was like, that's a fucking amazing ending.
And he's already called like the medic to come.
Right.
Yeah. So, another movie that very similarly ends this way is Get Out. And what's interesting is that in the director's cut, when the main character leaves from, killing that entire white family, he's a black guy. And so all the cops are like, they arrest him. No questions asked. They see he's alive. All the white people are dead and they arrest him. And then the ending is his TSA buddy visiting him in prison, being like, hey, I'm going to get you out of here. And Jordan Peele cut that ending for the theatrical release. And he's like, I'm not doing that ending.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, both endings say like a different thing. But yeah, on this one, I don't know why you just spoiled Get Out for people who haven't seen it, but I love the ending, and then the like going into that music. Once again, I think it's a great song choice for the ending of this, and it's satisfying because in my head I was like, oh, so she does get away. She survives, and she can explain all of this, and it will all probably make sense because you can do the like fingerprints on the murder weapons, especially the ones in Drake that are clearly have Felix's fingerprints on them. So, all of that will work out for her. And the only reason the cop shot her is because she stabbed Crispin like right in front of him. But
it also looked like it was like really unprovoked too, right?
I mean, it kind of was. What she did right then was murder. That was like all the rest was self-defense, but that was murder. But she'll get away with it, so it'll be fine.
All in all, I really like this movie. I love the twists and turns. I did not expect this movie to be what this movie was. So like the adventure, the highs and lows of what it took me on was really fun. And to watch it with my wife and her sister and watch their reactions, well, not really my wife since she spoiled it with her Christian synopsis, right? But watching my sister-in-law enjoying it, with all the twists and turns was also really fun. So I think this is a good movie to watch with like a big group of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of horror movies work that way. That's like horror movies are one of the few things that still does like well in theaters because people love like that scare opening night type thing. So yeah, I've been looking forward to watching this movie for years and it did not disappoint. I was very happy with it. At a couple of deaths, I was just like, fuck yeah. So it gave me what I wanted, and people should definitely check it out.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Milan, and I finally watched You're Next.
And this is David, and I also watched You're Next.